What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I wanted to put this in the beginning. Of course, we are coming to you live from Gotham Production Studios, which is our home here for X Drinking Buddy. Remember to subscribe on Patreon, patreon.com/Brennan Tassif. You can also follow on social media at X Drinking Buddy on Instagram, Twitter, and follow me at Brennan T Comedy on all social media. Check out BrennanTComedy.com for the upcoming shows. And don't forget to get your X Drinking Buddy merch. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Boom. That's it. Easy peasy.
Grab me a beer and grab him a coke. We bout to sit for an hour, bullshit and tell jokes. And please don't mix it up, cause he done sobered up. Brennan T Comedy on your social media feeds. And Brennan Tassif is your X Drinking Buddy. Brennan Tassif is your X Drinking Buddy. Brennan Tassif is your X Drinking Buddy. Brennan Tassif is your X Drinking Buddy.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Brennan Tassif is your X Drinking Buddy. I'm your host, Brennan Tassif. If you're new to the program, quick rundown of the show. I used to be everyone's favorite drinking buddy. It was my favorite thing to do. Hang out with friends, get drunk, do drugs, get in all sorts of trouble, and then reminisce about those crazy stories. I am sober now, but it's still one of my favorite things to do. Hang out with somebody and reminisce about the crazy old days. Most weeks I'll be joined by a guest. This week is no exception. All the way from Los Angeles, California, the man, the myth, the legend, Matt Fulchiron.
Hello, everybody.
What's up, dude?
Nice to be here.
You're back.
Once again. I feel like I'm at another home away from home at this point.
Yeah.
Gotham Studios, New York City, hanging with Brennan.
We're back, baby.
I live in the sticks now. I'm living like way the fuck in Brooklyn.
Yeah. When you told me where you were staying, I was like, oh, that's far.
To me, it's like always like, well, I took the L to get home before.
Yeah.
I'm taking the L to get home again. It can't be that far, but it's just...
It's like an extra 12 stops.
It's Dante's like 7th level, man. It's
man.
I got on the train today and, you know, I leave crazy early.
Yeah.
So the
You're
phone,
one of the few people I tell,
the phone said 45 minutes
Yeah.
away. And so I'm like, I'll leave an hour and 15 just because, listen, I factor in walking up the
Everything,
steps
yeah.
and everything. And I didn't factor in that I was just going to go one stop towards Manhattan. One out of like 10 I had to go
Yeah.
before I could head north. And it just stops, and you hear the announcement. You never think the announcements are for you.
No.
You're just like, the woman was like, you know, this is the last stop on the train, and there's like two teenagers like fist fighting on the platform, you know,
Yeah.
and they're having fun, but it's worse than any fight I've ever been in. And like, you know, sometimes there's like transfers at trains.
Yeah.
But they're like, they might be at the same station, but they're like
They're
3
not.
blocks away.
Yeah.
And like so far away that my phone isn't even suggesting it.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. Oh,
so
yeah, yeah.
like I'm going to the M train now and I'm standing on the platform and it's just 10 minutes go by.
Yep.
15 minutes go by. And now I'm on the fucking slow train.
Yeah, because the M makes
to
every
40
single stop.
to 42nd Street. And I'm on the train, and I'm like, "There's no way. There's still 40 minutes to go." But the phone's always right.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're one of the few guests, because you've been on, I think this is your 4th or 5th appearance, and you're one of the few guests where I'll tell you the actual time.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before, but I had a guest, someone we mutually know, and he was the first guest I had after you, because we did ours via Zoom the first time. So he was the first live guest that I had that had like a bunch of credits and stuff, and I was so excited. And we scheduled it for 1, and I told him 1.
Yeah.
And then he texted me, and this is when I first started using the studio, and he texted me at 1:15, and he was like, "Hey, man, where is it again?" And I was like, "You haven't left your apartment yet?" He's like, "I'm right down the street. I'll be there in a second." And luckily, Gotham has always been so good to me. They were like, you can go a little long.
You can push 45 minutes.
But then you, of course, being the professional that you are, text me, and you're like, "Hey, man," and this was like at 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I was like just leaving my apartment. And you're like, "Hey, man, just letting you know."
Yeah, so for the audience, what did you say, 12 o'clock?
Yeah.
It was very early on, like, hey, let's start the conversation now.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing this 15 minutes prior.
Yeah, and
there's
I'm like
a possibility.
panicking, like, what is happening?
I gave you the computer time. I gave you my estimation. I was only 3 minutes late, technically.
I know.
Technically. Starting 7 minutes late. That's enough for a podcast. 53 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
You put an intro on. You put an outro
push a little bit,
on.
yeah.
Come on.
It's interesting you said that about the subway, because living in New York as long as I have now, because I'm coming up on 3 years, I'll be like, oh, I know what the fastest way to get somewhere is, but I'll plug it into my phone just almost to see like what time the train is coming.
Yeah.
And my phone's like, you want to go this way? And I'm like, I don't think I want to go that way. But to your point, the phone factors in. Like sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'll go to this station and then walk to the next one. And it's like, hey, fatty, by the time you walk to the next station, you could have just gone 2 more stations over and just walked across the platform.
Yeah, but I think my phone did me wrong this time because
really?
I think I really could have got out at 34th and walked.
Oh,
Because it's about the same distance. But the phone wants to get you
as
even
close
0.1
as possible,
closer.
Yeah, it doesn't want you to walk.
That's where the phone fucks you.
Yeah, because it doesn't want you to walk. And so for mine,
It wants you to sit on your ass and look at your phone.
like when I go to Astoria, I take the 6 to 59th because I'm like, oh, that's super easy. And I just got to walk a couple stairs to switch platforms at 59th.
Yeah.
My phone's always like, nah, man, you want to take the Q because it's right out my front door.
Yeah.
They're like, take the Q across Manhattan to 57th and then go back across to Astoria. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense
Your
to me.
phone's like, hey, you're a good kid. But check this out.
You don't want to walk.
You're doing this wrong.
You don't
Take
want
it
to walk
from
to
me.
Lexington.
Yeah. I got satellites here. I got satellites there. I got people in the streets.
I got people everywhere, man. But you're here now.
Yeah.
You're back in New York. We did an awesome show at Old Man Hustle, the Brooklyn Comedy Club. With Matt Fulchiron and friends.
That might have been one of my favorite shows I've ever done in my life. Because
I had never experienced anything like it.
I haven't put together a show for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really
because
been in charge of a show.
The producer even asked you. He's like, "Hey, have you done?" And you're like, "No."
It was this weird scenario where the guy didn't work for the club,
Yeah.
but was kind of hired out. He's like, "Do you want to do it?"
Like a contractor.
I'm like, "Look, I'll host the thing, and we'll get into that in a second." But the last time I ran a show is when this is how I met Christina Pazitsky. She used to run a show in California in like 2003.
Yeah.
And she gave me and my friends the show that she had been running for a year. And we were done within 3 weeks. Because it's such a pain in the ass to run a show.
lot.
This was different because I didn't book that many comics. And you guys were all friends of mine.
Yeah.
But running a showcase show with like 8 people that I maybe know, maybe don't, is a fucking nightmare and even with the friends, I had 2 people showing up past the start time, which was fine with me because it was my show and I planned on doing anywhere from 35 to 45 if I had to.
Yeah.
But I had the idea that day, I was like, well, I think I'll host and like get the vibe because I actually have a lot of experience with like starting cold and like doing the vibe of the show. And we were sitting there. I got there an hour early just to like fucking get ready and like hang out.
Can I be honest with you? I sat on the
people.
platform for like 2 trains because I was like, I don't want to show. I was like, I don't know what Matt's got going on. I don't want to show up at like 7 and like sitting there by. So I waited, and then when I still was there super early. But when I texted you, you're like, yeah, I'm already here, man. And I was like, all right, cool.
This podcast should be called the Early Bird Podcast. Or like commuting with Brennan.
The Blue Plate Special.
Yeah. No, so it was great the lights weren't even on when I got there in the showroom, and the bartender followed me back. And the green room wasn't open downstairs. That's why she was following, because I was in the basement trying to open the green room. And but anyway, the guy came and talked to us, and I was like, like that's when I decided. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna host the show. Mm-hmm. No, when you got there, I go, you heard something different because you were planning on hosting the show.
Yeah, I was.
So this is interesting. What you hear is based on, like, first of all, how clear your friend speaks, but also, like, what you were planning on was hosting the show.
Yeah.
And so when I said, I think I'm going to host the show, you heard, I think I'm going to ask you to host the show.
Yeah.
Or something like that. You heard 2 words that weren't there.
Yeah.
It's weird how your brain does
absolutely.
that.
It hears
what
it wants to hear. Yeah.
And then the guy came and talked to us, and he goes, and I said, I'm going to host. And you were like, you're going to host. You're like, I'm going to host.
I thought you just asked me to host.
We started looking like the biggest rookies in the world in front of this fucking guy because he was just asking a simple question. And then when you said, I thought I was going to host, I was like, maybe Brennan should host. Yeah, Brent, you know what? Brennan's going to host. And you were like, I could tell you were like, oh, dude, Matt was thinking of hosting. You were like, I don't want to host. And I was like, no, you know what? It took us about 3 minutes in front of this poor guy. I was like, I'm going to host. And I'm so glad I hosted because, and this part I kind of made up on the fly. I was thinking about doing it.
It was a great idea.
I got up there and I didn't do much time. But, dude, even just when I open for people, sometimes they get on the Voice of God mic because they don't want to appear yet. They want to make a big appearance. But and Todd Glass has done it before. Get up there and be like, hey, this is my show. And it's called Matt Fulchiron and Friends.
Yeah.
I didn't name it that. But since it was that, I was like, let's do it that way.
Yeah.
Like I went up there and I explained how I knew everybody.
That was so fun.
And it was fucking cool because material, I have funny material, but it sound so contrived in the one spot in front of 25 people. So I was like, I just told everybody how I knew you and how I knew Daniel and how I knew Brittany Carney. And it was so fun. Like the vibe was so good.
Yeah.
A lot of it had to do with the fact that a lot of your friends were there. A lot of Daniel's friends were there. Even like I had one person fucking show up. A couple other people show up. But the vibe was good. Everybody was rooting for us.
Yeah.
And it's one of the only times in my life where I'm doing a show and I'm rooting for everybody on the show. I want everybody to do good. Like even sometimes when I headline and I bring somebody, I'm like, well, they don't do too good. You know what I mean? Like I want them to kill. I want them to be at like a 80%.
Yeah.
That's where I want them.
And then you come in and clean
But this
up.
time I was like, no, 100. I don't even care if I go on. Like this.
Yeah.
This is great. And everybody was so good.
It was so
everybody just kind of brought their A game, not in an obnoxious way, in like a positive, like fun way.
Yeah.
Everybody felt comfortable and amongst friends. And it was so awesome, dude. I was so happy with it. And I'm going to do it every time I visit here.
It was the best. And I told you this after, but it was the best show I'd been a part of in New York.
Yeah.
Like I've had sets where like, the room is packed and I do really well and stuff. And it's obviously why we do it. It's a ton of fun.
Yeah.
But this was different because it was like a family kind of a thing.
It was almost like a restaurant shift meets stand-up, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, all right, you got to light me.
Yeah.
Like we were like actually running the show. Like I was
fun.
running the light, the official light, not that holding your phone up bullshit.
No.
The real light. You know what I mean?
Because when he said, here, I'll show you where the light is, I was like, oh, I thought we were just going to hold up a phone. He goes, no, there's a light. And you were like, yeah, let's find the light.
Let's do this right.
Yeah, it was fun.
Let's turn on the light. And then when people run the light, we'll start
we'll
holding
start
our phones up. But
up.
nobody ran the light. Everybody was cool. Because it was just enough people to where you didn't want to run the light.
Yeah.
You know?
And it was one of those things, too, where, because I'm so used to a 1 minute light. And as a storyteller, that can be kind of, intimidating.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, if I'm like halfway through a story, I'm like, beautiful. I'll just end it when I hit this tag. But if I'm like finishing something and then the light pops on, I'm like, okay. Like I've got enough to where I can do it. But it was fun. And Tracy, who came out, my girlfriend, and she brought some people. And it was interesting because they had only ever seen me do like 5 to 7 minute spots.
Sure.
So she was like, that was so cool. Because it's so weird too in comedy because you were like, I'm going to have you do 15. And I was like, beautiful, awesome. And then I got there and you're like, yeah, 15 to 20. And I was like, all right, cool. And then I pull out my little notebook and I start writing. And it's this weird thing where I'm like, I know I have like an hour of material, but my mind just goes blank.
Yeah.
And I literally had like my opening joke, which is, I'll use the same opener a lot. So I have my opening joke and then the joke after. And then it was just blank. And I was like, I know I have more material than this.
I'm the same way.
And then I have to start like flipping through my book and looking at my notes app and stuff. And I was like, okay.
Right.
And it was so weird because in New York, you don't, even at like the Stand and the Cellar, even at the bigger clubs, you get a 12-minute spot. That's the standard spot. So it's like 15 to 20. It was so freeing to just be like, let's just have fun.
And then the funny part was, as soon as I brought you up and looked at my clock, we had started 10 minutes late.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, he don't need to do a 20. So I let you at 14 anyway.
Yeah. And then,
but you still did 20, which was awesome.
Yeah. Because when you were, but right before I went on, or right before you went up to bring me up, you were just kind of like, yeah, I'll let you have a 15, but like, play around with it. Right. Do what you want. And so I had set the timer on my watch because it'll vibrate. So I set that for 15.
Yeah.
And it was so weird because as soon as it went off, the light went on and I was like, oh, we are simpatico, man. Like everything. And then I was like, well, I've got like a 2-3 minute bit, like it's a series of bits, but it's like a chunk. And I was like, oh, I'll just end on this because it's a stronger chunk.
Yeah.
And then I did, and it was so fun to like have people I knew like sitting in the front, which normally I hate.
Yeah.
But this was fun because it was like a lot of people we knew. So it was like, oh, who cares?
Chill fucking vibe, man.
Yeah, it was.
And you knew if you went under or over, you weren't going to hear about it from me.
Yeah.
You didn't have to worry about that shit.
Yeah, it was. It was so fun, and the cool thing too was just just you being like the fact that you were just like, yeah, this is what we're doing. You weren't like, hey, I'm going to cut everybody to 7 because I want to do 45. You were like, no, we're cool. Like, we're still making great time. Like, we're good.
And I also had a great feeling now, too, where like I finally feel like I have enough jokes, enough material where like, if nobody else shows up, then we'll still be good. I'll just do like 45 minutes.
Just do longer,
and we'll be happy.
Yeah, because there was a point.
Nobody showed up, which I expected. I didn't really panic. It's like nice to not panic. It's nice to... It's nice to have that kind of confidence, you know?
Yeah.
Because I just headlined like a week or two ago, and I was like, it's like fresh in my head, like how much my material I have. And I finally like gotten to a place where I'm like, oh, I have a lot of good material now. Yeah. Not as much filler. It's like, well, it was exciting.
That's an interesting thing too, because this gets into the whole content game of it. But it's like, oh, I'm going to record, because I recorded my set, your set, Daniel's set. And I was like, in my head, I was like, well, I want to get stuff that I haven't recorded. Because like that's what the whole fucking thing is now. But then at the same time, I was like, yeah, but my girlfriend's here with a bunch of her friends. Some of them have never seen me. Some of them have seen me a few times. So it's like, well, I don't want to do the same stuff, but I don't want to do brand like newish stuff and like it not work.
Yeah.
And then I did one bit where I thought like I do all the time, and it was a good bit, and it was just met with silence. And I was like, hey guys, like we're all friends here. And then of course, because your friends are in the audience, you look down and you make a joke about it.
Yeah.
And then everybody laughs and you're like, okay, cool, we're still on.
Yeah.
But it was just a weird thing, like trying to figure out what I wanted to do versus what I should do.
Right.
But I'm in the, like what you're talking about, where it's like, well, I have enough strong material where like, even if I get into a panic and blank everything on my set list, I can still like fill the 20 minutes with like material I know.
Yeah.
But it was
awesome, dude.
It was
and
so fun.
We got off stage and like
we were so excited.
A friend of a friend, a high school buddy, came to see me, and I hung out with him like years ago. And so we were like 30 years ago, I hung out with this dude. And now I'm talking to this dude. And then Dan St. Germain came in and he was like, how was the show? And I was like, it was fucking awesome. And he's like, are you being sarcastic? I'm like, no. What?
He literally goes, well, with comics, I can never tell.
I like, that was not a sarcastic response at all, dude. I was like, it was awesome.
Like I said, it was not probably. It was far and away the best show I had done in New York, because it was just not only being with you and Daniel again, and I love Brittany. I think Brittany's one of the funniest people.
Absolutely.
Because she's so like out there.
Nobody's got jokes like her. Nobody's got the same jokes as her.
At all.
And she's got such a cool personality.
Yeah. And I was dying. Like, it was funny because after the show and stuff, you know, I was talking to Tracy, and then I went over to Tracy's the next night for date night, and we were talking about it. And I was like, oh, you know, what'd you think? And she's like, well, I'd never seen Daniel. Daniel was so funny. And like, she's like, I already love Matt from the podcast. And she was like, Brittany was kind of like nothing you would expect.
Exactly.
And I go, yeah, I know, I loved it. And she was like, yeah, we know, Brennan. Everyone heard you dying in the back, like cackling.
Well, that's another thing. I brought people with good jokes.
Yeah.
There was like a minute and a half of crowd work total.
Yeah, total.
No
and
questions.
I did most of it because I knew a lot of the people that were sitting up front.
Yeah, no, I was so proud of that. Daniel was on. I went to the bar and came back, and Jake, the guy that was helping running the show as well, he was like, who's this guy? And I'm like, oh, fuck, what's happening?
Yeah.
I'm like, Daniel Torado. He's like, he's awesome. I'm like, yeah, I know. And that only goes to show you how big a scene New York is.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's
like Daniel has been here forever, and he's in with so many cliques and circles.
Yeah, and he's passing a bunch of clubs.
There's a guy that doesn't know who he is, and it's like, it's so wild, and like he's another one who's just so original.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That he's another one that you can't write his, like AI can't even write his jokes for him.
No, it comes from a place of like the whole last bit that he did about the fridge, and you're like, at first you're like, what are we doing? And then he goes into it, and you're like, like then I just start chuckling and then laughing and then I'm like dying.
You think he's gonna have like one example,
Yeah,
and then he's got the whole fucking thing
going
nailed, and you're like, hell yeah, dude.
Dude, it was so fun.
And you never heard that joke from anybody
ever.
Yeah.
And it was interesting too because like Jake, who's the intern for Skanks, Legion of Skanks, I see him every Monday because the listeners know I go to the stand every Monday to do Frantic. Sometimes I'm on it, sometimes I just go to hang out, but I see him every Monday. Because I get off of work around 8:39 and then I walk over to the stand and the Frantic show doesn't start till 10:15. So I just sit up at the bar and drink water and like hang out. And because he's the intern, he's always running back and forth. So I've seen him every Monday for like the last 3 months.
Yeah.
And then when he walked in, because he was like helping serve and stuff, I walked in and he's like, he kind of like looked at me but didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And you know that feeling of like, I know this person from
Right.
somewhere. And then I was like, yeah, man, like I'm at the stand all the time on Mondays. I just see you there. And he's like, that's where I knew you from. But it just goes to show it's like, yeah, I've seen him every Monday, like every week for the last 3 months, but we still didn't even know each other were in that world of comedy.
Yeah.
Like I just thought he was a producer for the show and he just thought I was some guy that showed up at the stand. And it was so weird. To your point, it's like, yeah, this scene is so big. Like, you could just not know who people are.
It's clicked up though.
Oh yeah, it's high school. Mm-hmm. Even at clubs, everyone has their own clique.
Absolutely.
Like you walk into the room and you're like, why are these people sitting over there? And then those people are sitting over there, and then like another group is sitting over here.
Nobody's dancing.
And nobody's talking to each other. There's no crossover.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you because you, like we mentioned before. On your last episode, you were moving to LA. Yeah. And then you went, obviously you have moved now. What was it like? Because we were talking about this a lot. What was it like when you actually got there? Was it, because we talked about how we thought it was going to be and all this kind of stuff.
To Los Angeles?
Yeah. Like when you showed up, was it just like you just jump right back in?
I mean, I definitely just jumped right back in, honestly. I've got a ton of friends there and I know all the clubs and I was instantly like headlining a Fallout at the Brea Improv. Yeah. And I crushed at the Comedy Store. I crushed at Comedy and Magic. And I was just like, it was better than when I was there before because like I've really had to fucking sing from my soup over the last 5-6 years. Every time I did a spot in New York, I had to like come with like so much fucking A game. And every time I'm on the road, every time I'm opening for someone big, I've got to like really,
you got to bring it,
really go. And I've finally accumulated this material that's like, you know, I don't want to say it's bulletproof, but it's good. I have confidence in it.
Yeah.
I know it. I know that it's like well written, and I'm just like fucking going for it. Yeah. Not to mention this year I've already worked more than I did all of 2023.
That's insane.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there's a preamble to Los Angeles, and that's going from New Orleans to Asia. I went to Tokyo. I went to Hong Kong.
Oh, yeah, because the last time you were on, we were talking about it was before the trip. Yeah.
And that's just a very abstract idea. And then I went and I did it. And that's a whole nother level of confidence when, like, Tokyo wasn't, like, the best show for me, but Hong Kong was fucking killer. Just absolutely killer. Singapore was killer. There was a point, and like, when I was up on stage in Hong Kong about like 14 minutes into a 20-minute set where I'm just like having so much fun. Yeah. And the audience is too. And this thought just popped in my head. I'm like, I'm in fucking Hong Kong. I feel like I'm in Minneapolis. This is insane. You know, really, like this little like moment, this 2-second thought I get to have between starting the next joke where like I'm in Hong Kong right now. You know, like this has all officially been worthwhile.
Yeah. I did it.
Then I get back to New York and it's just time to pack. And I've never packed like this ever in my life.
Yeah, because you guys, it's not like you were going to LA for some spots. Like you were moving to LA.
So first of all, we live on the 4th floor
of a walk-up.
Yeah, and I'm married now, so I usually throw out like 80% of my stuff.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Or give it away or whatever.
I have one box of stuff that I keep when I move, of like stuff that's really important to me. And everything else, I'm like, I'll just buy a new bed. Like I don't fucking care.
Right. So it's just like, it was like slow moving for like a week. And then it was like, oh shit, we got a week to go. And for that week, it was just like all day, every day, including carrying 40 plastic crates up the stairs. We hired movers to take everything out, but And then Kristen left as soon as the movers came, and then I still had 2 days to get everything together. So it's just wall to wall. I meet with my landlord. And in the meantime, Tom Segura's asked me to do an East Coast run with him. Starting February 1st.
And you're not going to say no. So you're like,
I'm not going to say no, but it's also like, I'm going to go do this 3-city tour, like on the way to LA and all that.
Dude,
get as far as like rural Pennsylvania and then work my way back to Atlantic City and then Baltimore. All the while, like, my stuff is on the way there.
Yeah.
And to the point when I woke up on Monday morning and I was meeting my parents on February 4th, I'm getting these notifications like, hey, we're delivering the car at 7:00 tonight. And I'm like, I'm in Maryland.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to be there. And they're like, well, you got to be there.
Someone's got to be there.
So like the stress is like, it just hasn't stopped.
How did you do that? How did you, like, when was Kristen there, or did you just?
She wasn't there. She was in New Orleans and she was hanging with her mom for like a week into it. So I was going to get there and I was going to take care of that. And like, you can't fucking get the car if you're not there.
Yeah,
so I just like pushed it back. We had the shit in writing.
Okay.
But you know how it is. It's like the East Coast office doesn't talk to the West Coast office.
Yeah,
and it's a fucking. It was a nightmare.
Well, that's a mess just with things in general. Like even within a building. Like I live in a huge building. Well, it's 3 buildings, but it's one property manager. Right. And it'll be like this thing where something happens. And so we'll go online and we'll put in like a work notice. Yeah. And then they'll come up and then they'll fix something, but then they might break something else. But then no one comes. And it's like, did, this guy not go down to the office and be like, oh, by the way, I accidentally dented this thing. We're going to have to go up and nobody says anything to anybody. Right. And we had a point where our build, like in our apartment, there was a huge leak. Like there was a crack in the wall or something. So whenever it was rainy and windy, which we had, we were talking about this before, but the winter here was like warmer than usual. So it wasn't snow, it was a lot of rain. And so water was like getting into the apartment. And in my room, thank God, wasn't affected, but both roommates' rooms were affected. Yeah. And so we were like putting in things like, hey, we might have to break our lease. Like there's flooding in the apartment every time it rains. Yeah. And Matt, I'm not kidding. We were threatening like laws, like lawyers and stuff. Yeah. And it still took them 3 months to like get everything in place to fix it. And I'm like, man. You all work in the same office. Like, how is this happening?
Dude, I got to tell you.
So I couldn't imagine.
I hate to tell you. I pay way less in Los Angeles. Yeah. And they're there that day.
Yeah.
They're there that day. In fact, the maintenance woman is the reason why I got the apartment. She loved me so much because I accommodate her so much. Yeah. But she has no idea that in New York, like, it's easy to accommodate somebody who accommodates you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's easy to be there when they show up. You live there. But apparently there's a bunch of assles out in Los Angeles who are like, I can't make it to my own apartment.
I have an audition.
It's like, you ain't got a job, motherfucker.
But I couldn't imagine dealing with people who are like, oh, that's the New York office. And it's like, well, they're going to LA. Yeah. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, no, this is about transportation.
This is the whole thing.
This is about moving.
This is about you talking to them.
You guys got to talk to these, And then even the tow truck guy iced me for $50.
Did he really?
Who's unaffiliated. He's like, man, you got too much shit in the car, which I didn't. He's like, $50. I'm like, all right, just get it out of my sight. Get it out of my sight. Here's $50.
So did you?
I'm not arguing with you. Because that's another thing about, like, communication. Like, my wife set it up. But now I'm talking to the guys, which means I got to call my wife, and then they got to call. And here's the $50. You got me.
Take it.
You fucking got me.
You win.
You got the convenience tax. You asshole.
Yeah, it's a weird thing too because it's like just that. I always say this when I'm traveling. There's like my budget when I'm home and on my schedule and doing everything normal, and then there's my traveling budget where it's like. You land and you're so tired and you're like, I don't fucking care how much the Uber is. I just want to get home.
I read something in a skateboard magazine called Big Brother magazine, which became the Jackass movies. Yeah. I like the books better than movies. This guy wrote, I think it was Dave Carney. He wrote this article that was like, he talked about the philosophy of surrendering to the trip. Yeah. So like, so much goes wrong on a trip. You plan a trip, but things go wrong on a trip.
Constantly.
And you end up spending more money on a trip than you budget, to the point where you should even budget like $300 for mistakes or whatever. Yeah. But this mentality of surrender to the trip, don't get uptight if you're paying another $70. Or
Yeah.
don't get uptight if, fuck it, I'm so tired, I can't even walk down to the deli. It's Uber Eats tonight.
Yeah.
Like, don't, and I love that. I think that's like one of those things because you can get in your head, you're like, this is a mission and I want to pull it off. It's like not stopping to piss on a road trip.
Yeah.
You're like, I want to make good time. You
Yep.
know what? That good time is full of physical pain.
Yeah.
Stop and put 15 minutes on that trip.
God, that's what happened to me.
Surrender to the trip.
When I drove up to New York, when my ex and I first got the apartment, I came up a few days. Like, we got the apartment on July 14th, but I came up like that week. Like, I took like 5 days off from work, and I was like, well, I'll just drive to New York. And in my head, like, I on Waze, and it's like, oh, it's 19 hours. And I was like, beautiful. I'll just fucking right through. I didn't stop to eat. I might have told this story before, but I'm sober at the time, but I'm just chugging energy drinks because
Right.
I'm like, gotta stay awake, gotta go. And
Which, let's be honest, is not that different from cocaine.
No, it's not. And that's what ends up happening is I get to like Delaware. And by the time you're in Delaware, you're only a few hours out.
Yeah.
And I'm at a rest stop like shaking.
Yes.
Because now I've overdosed on caffeine and I'm like throwing up.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I don't want to stop to eat. And now my whole trip is fucked because I'm throwing up and shaking and having like a caffeine overdose at a rest stop in Delaware.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't physically keep going.
Yeah.
Like, you know that thing where your body is so tired you can't keep your eyes open, but your mind is like racing?
Yes.
And I was just
Yes,
like...
I've drank vodka Red Bulls before.
Yeah. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I ended up having to get like a cheap hotel.
Yeah.
Like in Jersey, which sounds so stupid. It's like, you're right there.
But you're alive.
But yeah, because I just driving from Delaware to like the outskirts of Jersey to get to the hotel, I'm like nodding out in the
That's
car.
the
And I'm
worst.
like, which is so much more dangerous in my opinion than like drinking and driving. Because it's like,
It's the same
it's
thing.
the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. I shouldn't say it's more
Yeah.
dangerous, but it's the same thing where I'm like, oh, I just have to get to this. And it was in Newark, New Jersey. And I remember when I got there, because I had a bunch of stuff in the car, like to like put at the apartment, like just rugs and like shit we ordered on Amazon. And I remember getting there and checking in. And the guy was like at the front desk, he goes, hey, because I hadn't seen Sopranos at this point, so I didn't know anything about Newark.
Yeah.
He goes, hey, the street lights go till about the 5th row of the parking lot.
Uh-huh.
He's like, but the parking lot wraps around the hotel.
Yeah.
He goes, find a spot within the first 5 rows.
Right.
He's like, don't park outside of the street lights.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, but you guys have this whole parking lot. And he looks at me and he goes, don't park outside of the street light. And I was like, I hear what you're saying, dude.
It's so great that they have a parking lot, but they recommend you don't park in
Yeah,
it.
they were just like, and it was so weird. It was something out of a movie where as you drive around the hotel, like it's packed. And then right after the street light, it's like empty. And you're like,
How cool is
I'm
that
not
guy,
doing it.
though?
Yeah.
He's like, listen, I'm not
he saw my Florida
I'm not
ID.
going to incriminate myself
yeah.
here.
He was like, just
Don't park.
I didn't even think about that. This is the guy. He's at the front desk calling his buddies, like, "Hey, man, this guy just showed up wearing a Rolex. Find his car."
No, Jacksonville. Yeah.
But you got it. You got everything pushed. You got the stuff out there.
Yeah, everything worked out. You know, there's
It
always
always does.
There's always like a thing or two
Yeah.
where you're like, where is that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And,
I mean, I go through it now.
And that's the other funny thing is I got all this work on the East Coast
As soon as you got out there.
as soon as I got out there. So I'm flying back and forth and I'm constantly on the phone with my wife. Like I'm like, I don't know where it is.
Yeah.
It'll clear up. And she'd be like, I told you this, that, and the other I was going to put. I'm like, you told me? I don't know anything you told me.
And that's the other thing too.
I was like, I have a system in this life. Yeah. I have a system, but the system's gone. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I know where my keys are. They're in the place where I put my keys.
I know.
Not now.
My keys.
Not now. Because I don't have a place where I put my key. And that's how I live my life. I'm not, people think I have like a good memory wherever, which I think I kind of do. But as far as like where things are, I used to be a total fuck up. And then I think this applies to the premise of this podcast. I had to create systems for myself.
Yeah.
And I'm very good at the system.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
You have to create these kind of structures. Even if, like, even when I was running and gunning and like being stupid, like I still had structures in place.
Yeah.
Because that's
even more so, it's like memento.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
yeah,
you're writing
have
yourself
to-
notes and shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it was one of those things where it's like, I do drink every day and I love drinking and it's my thing that I do and I do it every day. But it's like, if I get fired, no help is coming. Like I left home at 17. Like I can't, there's no one to call to be like, hey, I need rent. Like there's no help.
There's also this thing when you're drinking a lot, which is like, if I get fired, then I have to admit I have a problem.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
like,
another
there's
big
no
thing.
way I'm going to have a problem. And there's no way I'm going to get fired.
So it's one of those things where it's like, I would like have set bedtimes, and it would be like 3 a.m, but I was like, I have to be in bed by 3, no matter what. And then you'd have those nights where you look at your phone and you're like, man, it's only 12:15.
Right.
This is so much fun. Then you have those other nights where you look and you're like, it's 2:45. I feel like I just sat down.
Right.
Like, what the fuck?
It's like in Mad Men where he tries LSD and he just smokes a cigarette like,
yeah.
you're like, oh, fuck, man.
Damn, what happened?
I want some more Netflix time.
Yeah, and so, but I still even
And
had...
you're streaming a TV show and you're like, I 4 tonight.
Maybe 4. I did that.
3:45.
I don't know if I've even told the story on the podcast. I did that when I got my interlock for the first time.
What's an interlock?
The blow device for the car.
Oh, yeah.
So I move into this new apartment because my old roommates kicked me out because we had this thing where I kept getting drunk, and then and I was living with a buddy, but he owned the house. So it was one of those things where like I'd pay him like $200 on the first. For rent was $600, and I'd give him like $200 on the first, and I'd be like, I work in the service industry.
Right.
I'll work like because he, not the mistake, but he told me like when his mortgage was due, which was like the 14th.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, I'm going to work this weekend. I'll give you the other $400 after my shifts this weekend.
Right.
Like, you're good.
Which
like,
is
you're
somewhat
fine.
reasonable, honestly.
Yeah. And I always paid rent, but I would just pay it late.
Yeah.
And he was like, hey man, this has got to stop. Like if you can, like, just stop. Like, you can't drink if you're going to live here anymore.
Yeah.
And I was at the time making the conscious effort to try and stay sober anyway.
Yeah.
Because Alyssa had left. It was a whole thing.
Sure. It wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And so I made it like 25 days. And then I was like, fuck this. Like, I'm going to drink. And I started drinking. And he saw me wasted. And it was like an amicable breakup. Like, he was like, hey, man, like, we had this like, it wasn't yelling. There was no screaming.
Right.
He just kind of looked at me. He was like, hey, man. And I was like, I know.
Yeah.
And he's like, if you would have made it 30 days, I was going to buy us a bottle. Like, I was going to celebrate. And I was like, yeah, well, I didn't. And he goes, next month. And I said, next month.
Yeah.
So then I ended up getting my own place. And at this time, I'm trying to get my license back and stuff. So I get the interlock in my car. And the thing is like, you obviously can't drink on the interlock.
Uh-huh.
And so I was like going with my uncle.
Did you put that on there yourself?
No. You have to go to a place. So this is
No, I mean, did someone order you to do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
It was court ordered. Yeah. For my second DUI.
Right.
So we end up going to this place, and now I'm drinking again. So we go to this place to get the interlock installed. But obviously, you can't be drunk when it gets installed.
Right.
But now my roommate's kicking me out. I'm already drinking again. So I'm like, fuck this. So I do the thing where I'm like, the night before, I'm like, well, if I have 8 shots, but I still get 8 hours of sleep, it'll be out of my system by the time I go in the morning.
Right.
And I think our appointment was at like 10.
Uh-huh.
So like 12 o'clock rolls around, and I'm just drinking. And I'm like, well, as long as I'm in bed by 2, I'm fine.
Sure.
And I'm way past the 8 shots at this point. And
Okay.
Then, yeah. And then 1 o'clock rolls around, and I'm like almost a whole bottle into it.
So the plan is fucked after shot 9 anyway?
And in my head, I'm like, it's still plenty of time.
Sure.
And I end up drinking till like 3:34 in the morning. And I'm like, 6 hours of sleep is
Feeling
more than
lucky.
enough time to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
I pass out. I wake up. I like struggle to get there. I have to take the bus to get to the car shop.
Yeah.
The car's there because I had it like towed there.
Right.
And I show up, and the guy who's installing, this guy was a piece of shit.
Uh-huh.
Like later on, I learned that like there were shops in Jacksonville that would like install it for like $50 and then charge you like $20 a month.
Right.
This guy charged me $800 to install it.
Oh my God.
And you think in your head, well, like this is what everyone talks about. This is why it's so expensive.
Yeah.
And I get there, and the guy's like, you know, when I install this today, you're going to have to blow in it in order to take the car.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, yeah, of course I know that.
Right.
He's like, you sure you know that? And I was like, yeah, dude, absolutely. So he installs it, and it takes a few hours to get it all done.
Yeah.
My uncle's there with like my grandma, like because he's helping me pay for it at the time. And then he has me blowing it, and it's just like, bam, 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 like the whole thing goes on.
Does it tell you how far over it was?
No, it just says fail.
Yeah, pass, fail, grade.
Yeah. And the guy was like, dude, you smell like a bar. Like, how did you honestly think you were going to get through? And I was like, my fucking system failed.
How were you feeling like the couple hours while he was putting it in? Were you confident?
Nervous.
Oh, were you sweating?
Bullets, man. I was sweating bullets. And I'm like chugging
That's
water.
so funny, dude.
There was a 24 pack.
Right, walking around and shit.
My uncle had a
Oh, my
24
God.
pack of water in the back that he had
Yeah.
just gotten from the store, and I'm like
Yeah.
burning through
Oh
it.
my God.
And then it failed, and the guy was like, "Listen, this is the first time we're getting it installed. You clearly have a problem."
Yeah.
He was like, "So we're technically not installed. So come back. Don't drink
Right.
at all tonight.
Have the worst night of your life
Yeah.
and then come see me.
Come back tomorrow."
Yeah.
And then, like I said, the guy was a piece of shit. He ended up like retiring.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
Off
'cause-
your money.
Yeah. And dude, he was seeing like 5-10 people a day. And like I said, he charged me an arm and a leg just to get it installed, and then was charging like $100 a month.
Oh my God.
And then I think he ended up like getting sick. He retired early, and he has like a Hellcat, which is a super expensive like Dodge Charger.
Yeah.
In the garage, just said, he's like, "Yeah, that's my car." And I'm like, "That's like the $150,000 like upgraded car."
Yeah.
And now you see why. And then I remember I was doing this bit on stage for a little while, but it never hit because it's so dark. But he ended up getting like really sick, and I was like, "Yeah, obviously you're a piece of shit. Like this is karma." Right. The joke I used to do was like, I never believed in karma until this guy got cancer, and I was like, "Oh, it does exist." But then people were like, "That's not okay."
Everyone knows somebody with cancer.
I
so
know, they're like,
yeah,
"Boo."
okay.
But then I ended up going to a different shop, and I was like, "How much is it to get taken out of the car?" And they're like, $50. And I was like, "You've got to be fucking kidding me." But yeah, that's when my structure had failed me, because I was just like, I got it. I got it.
Yeah, that was a system, but the system was crashing.
Yeah.
You didn't
All
stick
around
to
me.
the system.
No.
The system would have saved you.
Yeah. Well, and I know we've talked about it on shows that you've been on previously, like the first couple shows you came on, but you used to, I have the experience of like when you were first starting out in comedy and stuff, and like just partying after a show and then waking up and being like, all right.
It was, I think I might have been able to pull it off a lot better if I wasn't working 40 hours a week. And
Yeah.
that sounds stupid.
But you had
I needed the money.
Yeah.
I don't like fault myself for that. And I think it's good to work for it.
Yeah.
But every hour of my day was booked.
Yeah.
Because you wake up early, you go to work, and then I was actually somewhat responsible for a fuck up, just like you.
Yeah.
Like that's another podcast, the
Yeah.
responsible fuck ups.
Yeah.
We should have started that 20 years ago. So and I would go to the gym, and then I would go to like open mics and like really do my time there. That takes like 2 hours when
Hell
you're
yeah.
first starting. And
It's crazy.
but there would be like, and this was before iPhones and even paying bills on the computer. Like bills would be late.
Yeah.
Cars would be, registration. I'd have my car registered, but still not have it on the tag.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like, because then I was trying to find my social life as well, which was like, you want to date when you're in your 20s.
Yeah.
You want to have fun. You want to party, even though it's like really not that fun in a way.
It's not.
You're just stuck at a bar, like, and you're like, well, I don't know what to do, so I guess I'm gonna get hammered.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right, I had another shot and a beer. I guess I'll go smoke a cigarette, even though I don't really smoke.
Yeah.
And I'll go back. Then I'll go to the bathroom. Then I'll
That'll
go get
take
another
2
drink.
minutes,
Then I'll
yeah.
go smoke a cigarette. You're not even talking to your friends
No.
after. It's so loud, and so I was caught up in that whole thing. And then I kind of got worse. Like I was like, I had like a disappointment in my career in my late 20s, and I was like, I made like a conscious effort. It's like in Train Spotting. Me and Sick Boy made a conscious effort to get back on heroin. I was like, I'm just gonna be a fucking drunk. Seems to be working for a lot of people. Did you ever look at other people and think it was working for them?
All the time.
Yeah.
Some in my immediate
Right.
circle where I'm
Yeah.
like, how is this happening?
Right.
Like there are people I see now who are like just get fucked up and get on stage and then they crush, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to do that.
Sure. And to be honest, I don't know that it worked in my life so much, but it kind of worked. I hate to even put this out there because it only works for a short period of time.
Yeah.
Drugs and alcohol only work for a short period of time. And it didn't work all the time either. I would still have like terrible sets, but I would get hammered and go on stage.
Yeah.
And like just be out of my mind. And like a lot of people miss that. They're like, yeah, where's full charge? I'm
Where's
like,
the
I'm like-
Is that how
I'm
you got the nickname?
No, that's not how I got my nickname. But they're like, where's that character?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I don't really do a character anymore, which I think is growth, and I think it's for the best. But there's growing pains that go with it.
Yeah. You threw
But
one at the show. You threw one of the lines out when you went
Yeah.
up, and I was like, yeah.
Right. They're still there.
Yeah.
They're still available.
Someone turned
Especially
a fan
when
on.
Jake Gyllenhaal's Roadhouse is coming out.
Oh,
so
yeah.
No Swayze, no ways. He's
We
making
know
a big
the
comeback
rules.
this weekend.
Fuck yeah, it is.
But anyway, I did that for a while, and then when I wanted to, then you have to go for not just from the drinking, but like, okay, I can't do this act forever. It's a bunch of one-liners and they're used up. Like what am I going to do? Learn what the kids are doing? And that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
When you see like an older guy using phrases he doesn't really
I know
use.
some people who do that.
What I
And you're
mean?
like, come on, dude.
Yeah. So I wasn't going to do that
That's
either.
lit. And you're like, you don't know what that's the wrong context.
Right. Yeah.
God.
So I finally feel like I've got like some wealth material wise, and now it's time to take a special, and then I'm just gonna have to start over from that. But I'm happy the process is happening.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because like I think about it all the time where I'm like, well, if I could go back to like myself at 17 and like everyone's like, oh, would you tell yourself not to drink? Because I didn't drink all through high school. So it's one of those things, it's a real philosophical question where it's like, and that's the same thing when people are like, oh, well, if I went back in time, to the 1800s, I wouldn't own slaves. And it's like, yeah, I think we all like to think we would think that about ourselves, but it's like, and it's the same thing with my drinking where it's like, I would love to go back and say that, but it's like, then I'm not the person I am today.
Right.
Like I'm not the same.
I'd be okay with, no, I'm just kidding. Like, I feel like I got there. And of course there's always room. I'm going to look back at my 50-year-old self and be like, see what I'm fucking up now.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's impossible to have.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a question of like, if you could get to where you are now when you were 20, oh, that would be fucking awesome.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have a lot of friends.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Like you'd be like,
yeah.
I know what I would do. And it'd be pretty simple. I would do something very simple, which is just put 10% of my money in savings.
Yeah.
And and never touch it. And I wouldn't drink. I would actually do something that wouldn't be a smart idea when I was 20 in 1994. Was like I would smoke weed instead of drink.
Yeah.
But now what are we talking about? We're talking about me doing something illegal.
Yeah. That's
right?
true. Yeah.
So there's a lot of problems that go with that too.
Oh yeah, especially if you get caught back then.
So I guess I wouldn't do that either. And which is good. Like if you don't develop a dependency, you don't develop a dependency. But it's just unfortunately, it's fucking impossible to have wisdom like that.
Well, and it's just a crapshoot because it's one of those things where it's like, I like the situation I'm in now. Like, I like being able to tell people those stories and they'd be like, that never happened.
There's that too. There's also the contrast of knowing what hell is like.
Yeah, exactly.
And just kind of appreciating purgatory.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because
purgatory can feel like heaven if you've been to hell. Yeah. Boom, click for the week.
Nailed it. Where are we at? All right. It is one of the. It is fun though because, like, I don't know. It's just weird because it's like I would have. It's like if I didn't drink, Alyssa and I would have gotten married. It's like I never would have met her had I not drank because I moved to Jacksonville for rehab.
Yeah.
And it's like I would have like gone to law school, and it's like I probably wouldn't have gone to college had it not been for like that drive to one, play football, but two, also shed that skin of getting bullied in high school to then being a popular kid in college. Like I wouldn't have had the same kind of drive. So it's just a weird thing because it's that butterfly effect where it's like, yeah, but if I never picked up a drink ever in my life, I'm not the person I am now. And I've been obsessed with comedy since I was like 12 years old, and the listeners know that because I've talked about it, and you know that because I've told you that story a bunch. But it is one of those things where it's like, I don't know. I was drunk on stage the first 7 years I was doing comedy.
Yeah.
I would have never gotten on stage had it not been for like drinking with my friends, being like, I'm going to try that.
Right. I think there's an aspect to a risk. I heard Dr. Drew talk about this like 20 years ago. Like there's a impulsiveness that goes with someone who takes big chances. And there's like an adrenaline that goes with drinking, which is the same that goes with performing, the same that goes with football.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a similar personality type. And I kind of don't want to put that out there on this podcast. I don't want to be like, oh, I'm an artist. I'm also going to be a drunk.
Yeah.
You don't need to do it.
You don't have to.
And there's people
at
that
all.
have never been drunk on stage, like very successful people
I
who
have
have
people
never
on
been
the show
drunk
who
on
talk about
stage.
that, yeah.
There's people that I say you can't be wise when you're young, but there are people that are wise enough where they're like, they're not going to drink. And you and I were those people actually when we were teenagers. We're not drinkers. I wasn't.
No, neither was I.
In fact, I was kind of like, I don't want to be a drinker.
Yeah.
But then, there's a permission that can fuck you up. Like,
what do you mean?
Okay, I'll start with a small anecdote. I started smoking weed because it became illegal in California.
Yeah.
But let's start with something more substantial. I wasn't into drinking. One day I came home the summer before I went to college. I came home from work and I'm just having dinner with me and my dad. My mom and my brother aren't there. And he goes, we need to talk about college. He's like, there's going to be a lot of drinking there. It's just part of it. He's like, stick to beer. Don't drink any punch. And it was almost like you have permission to drink beer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I never got that confirmation. I never got that. It wasn't encouragement.
Yeah.
But it was like, hey, this is how it's going to be. This is how you're going to be. It was almost like, this is how you're going to be. And I was like, okay. And I didn't jump right in. Like, I wasn't drunk every day.
Yeah.
But I was drunk on like Friday and Saturday. Because that's what's so funny too, is like, I had no tolerance. I was 50 pounds lighter.
2 beers and you're like,
now I can drink 2 beers and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I'll feel it too. That's what's funny about drinking 2 beers now is like, dude, this wasn't enough for you when you're 18? Because I'm drunk off 2 beers. Like, I can admit that, but when you don't have experience, you don't even know you're drunk until you're passing out.
Yeah.
You
and
know?
that used to be one of my, it's interesting because on that kind of note, I was the kind of person where a lot of people drink to like, bury feelings and hide from stuff. And eventually that's what it developed into for me. But the whole starting process was like when I had that first shot and my anxiety kind of went away, I was like, oh, this is awesome. But it was like, I didn't drink because I thought it was so terrible when I was younger.
Yeah.
That it took me getting popular and getting friends, which everyone's like, yeah, obviously that's why it's called peer pressure. But like, it took me getting friends to start doing bad shit.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people will act out when they don't have friends because that's how they deal with stuff. And I did that on a personal level. Like I would hurt myself and stuff, but I was so conscious of the rules and authority. And I think we talked about this last time you were on. And then when I made friends, it was like pre-law and like, I thought it was like, to quote, "Are you garbage?" Like you couldn't tell me nothing. Like I thought I was the hottest shit.
Yeah.
And it was then I was like, fuck all y'all. Like I'll do whatever I want.
Yeah. And I think there's also too, like growing up, you're a lot younger than me, but like I grew up with like the say no to drugs thing.
Yeah.
And we had cops come in and
we had the DARE
tell us
program and
stories
stuff.
about
Yeah.
the horrors of doing drugs. And so I was like, this shit will kill you. Weed will kill you. Even drinking, And then you meet people who have done like cocaine and shit.
Yeah.
And they like made it to class and they're not dead. They're not dead.
Yeah.
And you go, who's right? What's the truth here?
Well, and that's so true because when I was in college and the first time I ever saw cocaine, I was at a friend's dorm. And she was like, do you want some? And I was like, no, I'm like a fucking Division I. Like I was still playing football. I was like, no, like that's in the movies. Like we don't do that. And then just to watch them do it and be like, all right, let's go out. And you're like, oh, it's just like, okay, let's just do a couple and then go. And it's like, I thought like the second it hit your nose, like your body like decayed and like the whole thing blew up.
And you weren't going to leave the apartment.
Yeah.
You were going to do cocaine for the next 7 days.
But that's not. And
that's not what happened. That's what happened to me the hour I moved to Los Angeles in 1997. We're staying with this friend of ours, this pretty woman, young woman, probably about like 23 years old. We get there, we're exhausted from the road, and she goes, "Yeah, people are coming over." She goes, "Do you mind if I blow some coke?" And I was like, "What?" I go, "Well, mine? I mean, it's your apartment." And then like people are coming over and everybody's doing cocaine. I'm like, so this is Los Angeles.
Yep.
God. And I didn't do any because I'd never done. I've only done it a handful of times, and I don't recommend it. I do think it's dangerous, especially nowadays.
Yeah, it's super dangerous. I have a friend who still does.
You also kind of try it and you go, "Oh, this is just like 7 cups of coffee.
Yeah.
Like this isn't."
It's
this isn't like what all it's cracked up to be
at all.
Yeah,
it's super overrated, and
that makes you think it's less dangerous.
It does. I know people obviously still in like the comedy circles and stuff, and I have friends that still do it. And my thing is like what you were talking about with the conversation with your dad is how I feel with that. Like I'm not going to tell them not to do it. Like this is what they do. They do it.
Yeah.
So my question for them is always like, are you at least testing it?
Right.
Like, are you at least?
Yeah.
And they go, no, but I have a guy and I trust him.
That.
And
Fuck
it
that.
makes me so scared for them because
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but what happens when he's short 1 month and he needs to like chop it up with something? Like, just test it. And I have friends that are like, nah, I trust and I'm like, because I've had friends who have died from, obviously, from fentanyl and heroin overdoses and stuff. So I'm like, you don't understand.
Yeah.
And it's weird how those worlds don't intertwine as much as you think they would. Like, my world of recovery and the friends that I know who have even relapsed and gone back out, or the friends that have died, like my friends who are like in finance or like who are in, entertainment, like they don't know those kind of people.
They don't know what kind of people.
Like the kind of people who are like lost everything and are in recovery.
Right.
So it's like I'm like kind of that junction point.
Gotcha, yeah.
Where I have friends who are in recovery and drugs and alcohol destroyed their lives like mine.
Yeah.
But because I'm also in show business, I have friends who have never seen that side of drugs. They're just like, I just do coke on Saturday nights.
Right. They're also in a period where they're like, this is it, man. They feel like they're in Andy Warhol's factory. They're like, I'm in New York City. I'm doing it. I'm podcasting. I'm doing sets.
And it's
people
insane.
are drinking. New York's actually pretty cool about that. Like, there's a lot of comics who don't drink at all.
Yeah.
They're like, and it's because there's so many sets a night here, I think.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. I've had a lot of people on who don't drink, and it's not through like, they lost everything or they needed to get help or anything. They're just like, no, like if I want to be the best at comedy I can possibly be.
And it's not acceptable to be drunk on stage here. If people see you drinking, fine.
Yeah.
But if it makes it to that stage and you're like, they hold it against you.
Oh yeah, and
know?
it's not so much the audience as
Your peers.
It's other comics are like and like go back to what we were talking about earlier. Like I've seen comics like destroy drunk. Like they've been hammered and get on stage and just murder, and the crowd loves it, and everyone's having a good time.
Right.
But as soon as they get off, other comics are like, "The fuck's wrong with you?"
Right, and also they're not killing at the midnight set.
No,
they're going to be a mess at the midnight set.
Yeah, and it's like the 10 o'clock or the 9 o'clock, and especially other comics are like, "Hey man, this is my whole life.
Yeah,
like I gave up everything to move to New York to do this, and you're making us look like a bunch of assholes."
I think that's a bit much. You're making me look like
that's just what plays in my head. That's just the tune.
Your bad set effect. No, I'm just no. I get what you're saying though. Like you don't want it to turn into that kind of party.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
I guess because I'm always just like, hey man, but that's the thing I had to learn the hard way was when you move to New York, you're like, oh, it'll be different. Like everyone in New York is like the best of the best.
There's like a jock mentality in New York, and that's not an insult.
No, yeah.
It's like an athlete attitude.
Competitive kind of like.
Competitive, and also like, I'm going to be the best fucking comic I can be.
Yeah.
You know?
But it doesn't go for everybody is what I've noticed. Is I've met people just at mics and stuff who moved here from other towns because they were like not even the best in their town and they move here. And then you're like, are you not... Like, what's going on? Are you not taking this seriously? And I think that goes back to your point about working for it.
Yeah.
Is there are some people where they're like, yeah, I wanted to move to New York and my family, and I'm, no shade, no hate, whatever the kids say. I'm all for it. But they're like, yeah, I moved here and like, I work part-time. My family helps me out with the rest of the rent.
Right.
And then they just kind of dick around and it's like, oh no, this is like what I want to do.
It depends. It really depends on the person.
Yeah, that's true. Because there are
to focus on something too hard can be bad too.
Yeah.
Because then you criticize everything you write. You criticize everything you do. And you go, that sucked. Whereas somebody who's just like kind of doing it part-time and having fun, well, and they don't want to be this big headliner.
Yeah.
Like they might want to be an actor or something. Like,
they're
get
just having
10
a good
minutes
time.
together.
Yeah.
That's what the audience wants the comic to have a good time. And
I know.
Fuck. Like I used to get on stage and like, if I messed up, like if I flubbed a word on the first joke or two, I'd be like, it was like a gymnast at the Olympics. I'd be like, well, there goes that fucking
The whole set is
performance.
gone.
Yeah. And I realized they don't give a fuck.
It took me a while to learn. I didn't learn this until I got to New York, but there were some bits that I have that are like my favorite bits, and I try to do them the same all the time. And I don't know if that's ingrained in me because I would see Comedy Central Presents and record it on VHS and watch it over and over and over, and then when I would see the comic on something else, I'd be like, I know that joke, but he did it different, or she did it different.
He sat down, he slow jammed it.
Yeah, and so like I'm like, oh, you got to like do it the same every time, which is not true at all. And in fact, it could be a detriment because you get sick of it.
You're not listening to yourself.
Exactly. And I've had it before where I've messed up lines, like I've fucked up the order or something, and it's actually gone better.
Yeah.
But in my head, to your point, I'm like, this is it. The whole joke's ruined.
Yeah.
Like nobody's going to get it. And then of course everyone gets it because it's not a fucking highbrow material. Like, and you're like, I guess we could do it that way.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different philosophies. I recommend combining the two.
Yeah.
Like in the morning, work like an athlete. in the afternoon, live the life of an artist.
Yeah, there
That's
you
the
go.
way I see it.
Boom.
You know, you got to do both. In acting class, they called it set it, forget it. It's
Yeah.
like, it's not the same exact thing, but it applies. It's like, work your ass off on your lines. And then when you go into the audition, like, fucking don't even try to remember your lines.
You're comfortable.
Just
you know it,
like,
yeah.
it'll come to you.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, something will happen.
Yeah.
Something will happen.
Dude, this was
You know?
fun, man.
Oh, is it over already?
Yeah.
Fuck. All right.
Plug everything.
Oh,
Full charge.
Just check me out at the Full Charge on Twitter and Instagram. Matt Fulchiron on TikTok. I post once a year on that. And don't even bother me on Facebook. Just go to Twitter or Instagram. Facebook sucks.
Yeah, it does. Dude, it's horrendous.
Yeah.
It's a fucking war zone out there now.
That's the next episode.
Thank you, everybody, so much for listening at Brennan T Comedy on all social media, BrennanTComedy.com. Check out the one-man show, Ex-Drinking Buddy, a comics look at life, near-death, recovery, and redemption. And we'll talk to y'all next week. Boom.
That was good. We got on topic there for a while.
Yeah.